everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the KickBack. You're with me, AlehStair. Remember, if you do enjoy this video, please do leave us a like. Comment always helps, and also a nice subscription would be quite good. We've got a lot more coming in the pipeline, but today for episode 4, I don't really need to give this fella an introduction. Arguably bigger than the country New Zealand. In the guest seat today, we have the old Zealand on Twitter. It's Zealand Z, mate. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Thank you. Bigger than now. That's my new goal. My new goal is to get more YouTube subscribers than there are people in New Zealand. But I love New Zealand, so I wouldn't want to outclass my like namesake.
Do you know what the population of New Zealand is? It's just as like a
million. My guess, 8,245,000. Let's see how close I was. Population of New Zealand is, oh heavens, I'm closer than I thought. It's 5 million.
All right then. I mean, you guys know what to do. I'm sure we could have a really small dent into that target and get some of the guys who aren't subscribed. Which, to be honest, mate, they already probably are to the channel.
Hopefully. I don't know. Yeah, I try not to take myself too seriously in that sense, but I seem to be getting introduced like that more and more. Well, people already know who you are, and I'm like, I don't even know who.
Still figuring things out. Fair enough, but I guess we'll start with the question that we always ask sort of everybody, and that is, what was the moment that you realized that sort of football was the sport for you? I'm not sure with you per se it's your favorite sport, it's number one in your ranking, but what was the moment where you were thinking, okay, this has got my attention now?
I love sports. There were a couple things. I always liked goalkeepers, not like any other position, and so I fell in love with that really early, because God, you just don't have to work at all. Well, I meant, you do. I'm not discrediting like the goalkeepers union, right? And I did work very hard, but I meant in the running. Like, you get to be in this cool group of dudes that are all in like fantastic running shape, but you don't have to be the guy running. You're just and what I really appreciated, because for a large portion of my athletic life, I was not clutch. I felt pressure intensely. To the point where like I had a piano recital one time where my hands were shaking too much and I just couldn't even play Fur-Elise. You know, I was one of those kids. I eventually worked through it because I played 5 sports in high school, which is in the US age 14 to 18. So I played 5 different sports. So I was like always involved in something because I was very athletic, but my brain was not there. I'm like what really old white commentators think black soccer players are. Like, that's basically what it actually was. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Guys, that doesn't make any sense, but there's actually a piece of research. She said I was allowed to go on tangents, and I wrote a paper about this during my school in broadcasting. It's this, like, if you are broadcasting European soccer match, you are like 4 times as likely to reference the physicality. Like, this is a sociological paper they came out with that I did a presentation on. It's 4 times as likely to reference the physicality of a black skin player than a light skin player. And like inversely proportional to mention their mental ability compared to their physical ability. So like you basically, you look at somebody like I can't even come up with an example anymore. I did this whole presentation. It's
secured the grade and then forgot.
Example, someone like Dan James. Dan James can fly.
Yeah.
Like, Daniel James is super fast. Or Arjen Robben. Just because he was balding, people assume that dude didn't have. That man was rapid. But every time you're talking about Arjen Robben, and the more you think about it, the more obvious it becomes. What are they talking about? Not the fact that the dude can fly, right? And then if you had Arjen Robben and Wilfred Zaha in a foot race, Arjen Robben in his prime is probably winning that. I mean, I don't know, but
yeah.
But when you think about the player, you're like, oh, Robben was so crafty, like, and because that's people just keep repeating. You know, it's like, oh, he just had the way he cut inside, right? And then you think about the way they always describe Wilfred Zaha as like, oh man, he's explosive. You know, the way he just attacks the space. And so I was like the inverse of what those broadcasters think. Like, I had no mental game whatsoever, but my dad was a college athlete. I had like this generic physical skill set. And so goalkeeper really fit that, because you don't have the game comes to you. You don't have the pressure to seek the game out, to impact the game. And so I always loved playing goalkeeper. I mean, from the time I was like 6 years old, this was something that was very apparent. How'd you like that tangent? We got right out there, and then we got
I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm
we
really
aim for
interested in
we
this
aim for
stuff.
as casual as possible. So I mean, you're fitting the bill right away in terms of what we're after.
Yeah, no, it's sorry. I'm just this. It's like a stream all over again. It's something that's interesting, and then back to what I'm supposed to talk about. Yeah, I love research like that on broadcast because it's such an it's like I'm not saying that those broadcasters are bad people. It's just like they have this subconscious bias. I try to avoid that when I'm broadcasting games, but when I was playing games, it was always goalkeeper. And then there was a point, and this is just a very weird moment to be like, I kind of fell in love with the sport. I fell in love with the international game first, which is backwards for like everybody, especially an England fan, where the international game just equals pain, right? And you're just like, oh, I don't even want to think about it. I was unaware of the fact, like I'd been to soccer games. I knew that sport, that's the thing in the US, is everybody plays youth soccer. You just kind of grow out of it. Like you play the sport and you're like church league or something. And then, once your mom stops bringing orange slices to the practice, you're done playing, basically.
Yeah.
And so like everybody knows the rules and stuff. And then I got a DS game and I have no idea, like, a Nintendo DS, the handheld thing.
I'm familiar with the DS.
Oh, I loved those things. No. And I'm playing this, and somebody bought me World Cup 2006 on that.
Oh, yeah.
And
quality game.
I'm firing it up. And I'm 10 years old. For some reason, that was the first time I became aware Saudi Arabia was in the game. And it's a vivid memory of me loading it up. And I'm like, wait, Saudi Arabia like plays this sport? Like they have a team? Like they put a team together and they're like at this World Cup thing. And there was just this thing clicked because no other sport that we played in the United States was this kind of global affair.
Yeah.
And so over the next couple of years, and this really hit like main stride with the World Cup 2010 video game that I put like 10,000 hours in on the PlayStation. I never won, which is a huge sticking point for me. I made the final with Bosnia, with Finland. I made the final with Malawi. I never won the final. I'm such a choke. That's the example that I was talking about.
Yeah.
It was it's incredible.
All I'm saying is, if that was a Zealand second channel and you were to, get a Nintendo DS off eBay with FIFA 2006 World Cup, a road to the final, I'd watch it.
Oh yeah, that's such a jar. Those games are so bad now. You ever go back and play them? They're terrible.
They're horrible.
Yeah, the FIFA 2010 one, I think might have been with Bosnia. When I made the World Cup final with Bosnia, it was one of those 1 in a million simulations where my opponent in the final was South Africa, and I still lost. Oh,
that's disgraceful. That's disgraceful. But I guess that's what builds man. That's what builds character, and you have a lot of that.
Yeah. No, I've been kicked a lot by games. That was it. I was hooked on the international game. And then as you become exposed to the international game to learn about it, you just start watching the club game. So I would say by the time we got to like 2012, 2013, I was fully invested. I knew a lot of the club. Anybody who was on FIFA, I knew who they were. And I was super into the international side of things. The U.S. national team was kind of kicking some people around the yard around this time. This was like peak Dempsey and Donovan, and so we had like a really good vibe going. Julian Green was the hot young prospect, and he was from Tampa, where I grew up, and so there was a lot of cool things happening. He's since flamed out and then resurged. He's playing in the second division in Germany, I think. If you have no idea who I'm talking about, he scored at a World Cup. How dare you? But that was it. It was a DS game in 2006. And that is what kind of flipped the switch for me about the sport.
That's insane. See, everybody else that we've had has said, I was watching... Mine is Ruud van Nistelrooy, I think it was against Fulham, dribbling from the halfway line, fluffing it at the end and still managing to sort of get the goal. And that's what it's been for every other person we've had on this, but not with you. I guess I think you're the only person we've had that isn't from sort of that football country, which would maybe explain that in terms of the exposure too. But once you did get that exposure, which sort of teams at club level were you following?
a thing in fourth grade. No, it wasn't fourth grade. I think it was a little after that. NBC bought the rights to the Premier League while I was growing up. Like, this has all happened in my lifetime. And like, I'm 25. I'm like older than Pulisic, and Reina was always going to be into the sport. But there's a collection of guys like Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie that are of my generation that went through this same process of soccer becoming cool in the United States. Like, if you're wondering why all of a sudden there are a bunch of Americans that are not bad, that's why. Like, I mean, Dest is a special case and Reina's a special case, but like the other guys grew up when FIFA in the Premier League just became cool because people realized what else is on TV at 8 a.m. on Saturday. So like the Premier League just owns Saturday morning, and then it goes right into college football. It's my favorite sporting day in the United States. Have soccer from 7 a.m. to like 3 p.m. and then college football goes until like 4 a.m. because they're playing in Hawaii. And so it's like all day, and then you do it, and then Sunday's the NFL. It's amazing. And we're getting up on that time again. But that whole generation, when the Premier League came in, we actually picked teams. There was like a day in school. I think it was like 6th grade, 7th grade, which is 12, 13 years old, kind of right around this time that I was playing these video games all the time. And everybody was like, oh, Manchester United, I'm picking Liverpool. Like, you just picked a team. Yeah. And that was who you were going to support. And I picked Sunderland because I thought it was adorable. Yeah, I know. I thought it was awesome. Adorable's the wrong word. They like almost got relegated the year before. And that was one of those years where they were like doomed and they just boom, flew back into the table. So I was like, oh, Sunderland. I'm picking Sunderland. And of course, it just blew up. You know, they went lying down. So I've always had a soft spot for them just because they were a team that I was like, you know, oh, yeah, I'm going to root for Sunderland. But there's never been, I mean, I'm a Celtic over Rangers. I'm Barcelona over Real Madrid. But that's just when you watch teams for a long time, you're like, I prefer this team over this other team. It doesn't mean I'm not a ride or die. I don't have Messi's tattoo on my calf. You know, I'm not invested in a club team like that. And I feel like it really helps me because then there's nobody that hates me.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I don't have terrible. I have, like, everybody has it, the terrible fan takes. Where like, I just, you know, if you're, I have a major team in most other major sports. Like Tampa has an NFL team. It has a hockey team. It has a baseball team. So I have, you know, my team for every other sport. But soccer, I just don't. Which is, it's cool because I obviously love the sport and love watching the sport, but I don't have to emotionally invest myself to that level for anything. Others outside of the U.S. national teams. Now that I will get absolutely turned up for. Okay. And beating Mexico again. Oh, my roommate was asleep.
Okay. Like
so I'm doing this internship, right, covering the NFL to complete my degree. And I'm in Indianapolis, which if you have no idea where that is, just point at the middle of the United States, and that's where we are. And literally living next to a cornfield. There's an NFL team here called the Colts. And you should meet the people at the training camp, you know. It's like an actual reality TV show where it's like, how you feeling about the Colts today? And they're like, we're gonna win the Super Bowl. Let's go. Like, okay, all right. But anyways, so she's like not, you know, awesome, great friend of mine, not into soccer. And so understands the sport, has had to, I've attempted to teach her, like, well, not the rules, but like, what am I doing in this room when the door is closed and I'm screaming like that all the time? So she's asleep while the U.S. is playing in the Gold Cup. She works out at some ungodly hour in the morning. And I don't know if you followed the Gold Cup final. You probably didn't. Who would if you don't live in...
I had the updates on.
Okay. And we just kind of house this game. Like, we're getting outplayed, but not by a ton. We get to the 116th minute and we score. And I am just standing in my room silently screaming for like 5 straight minutes. And apparently she was awake because she's like, did I hear you like banging on your bed repeatedly? Like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. I'm more than okay, actually, but I appreciate it. Because I was just sitting there like smacking my bed. I was watching it right at this desk. And my bed's right here. I was just sitting here like this. So I am familiar with the, you know, with the limbs, but it's for the U.S. national teams. It's not for it's just not for a club.
See, that's strange because obviously what you're mainly known for on the internet, on Twitch, on YouTube, is your Football Manager videos, streams, etc. And I feel like a lot of people who I knew got into the game because it was a case of how cool would it be to manage my club. So for me, I'm a Manchester United fan. That's one of the first things I did, took over at Manchester United and went in. And that was a big draw for me getting the game. So how did you get into that stratosphere initially by, getting your first copy?
I will say this right now. It makes me so much better at the game that I don't have a club. Like it makes you so much better at the game.
Oh, no, I can believe that.
Somebody will be like, oh, this guy's from my club or whatever. Like, give him a look. And I'm like, he sucks. Like, you get these blinders on when you have players that you like in real life and players that you don't like in real life. And so you project that into the game. And so when you don't have, the only person I really have those goggles for is like Pulisic. Like, I always just think he's, shredding. But somebody just needs to duct tape his calves or his hamstrings on a little more and then he'll be okay. I got into the game because I never liked PvP. Let me rephrase this. I liked PvP games.
Yeah.
I just never enjoyed them for long periods. I mean, extremely, excruciatingly competitive. And so getting dump trucked by some 10-year-old on FIFA just drives me up a wall. Like I am just, and then they're dancing it just drove me insane. And so I always played, because I love the game, I'd play career mode. I just stopped playing like Ultimate Team. I don't really play Call of Duty that much. I play some shooters and stuff.
Yeah.
But I like, gaming is usually an individual endeavor for me. And so I played a lot of career mode. And as you know, if you play career mode for 5 minutes, you're like the best career mode player of all time. I mean, it's just like super easy. And so I would just, I had an ACL replacement. This is when I knew I needed probably something else to do. As I had a gigantic knee surgery. I blew out my knee sophomore year of college. And I'm like in bed. My mom's spoon feeding me soup. She like flies off the operation. And I'm on all sorts of drugs. Like I can't even feel my face for like 3 days. Right. I've got a giant hole in my leg. But from the moment I got home from the hospital, which somehow it's like an outpatient procedure. Like you're in the hospital all day, but then at 11 p.m. they're like, you can actually go home. And I'm like, really? I'm just so high. I'm like, is this a dinosaur talking to me? But then I went home and I turned on FIFA career mode. I started as Bari in the 2nd Italian division. And by the time I had finished taking the ridiculously strong drugs they'd been giving me, I'd won the Champions League in like 4 years. And I was, so high the whole time. I was on all these drugs for my knee surgery. And I'm like, I just beat the game, basically, in 4 years. And I can't even tie my shoes right now. So I was like, I probably need something else. Around that time, my friend was like, yeah, we bought FM14. He was like, there's this game. I read about it. Apparently it's like FIFA career mode. I believe the actual phrase he used was it's like FIFA career mode on crack. And I was like, okay, cool. That was a very popular turn of phrase in 2014. And so we bought FM14, but we didn't play it. Yeah, because once you open it, you're like, oh, never mind. Yeah. And you see all the numbers and you're like, dude, I don't even know how to get forward today.
It's too much info, especially when you go from that career mode jump, because I was big on career mode, similar to you. And yeah, it's insane. It's not, there are just certain games where you need to watch like a significant tutorial to be able to play. And Football Manager is always going to be that. But a lot of the best games also need that. Or if you're playing like Assassin's Creed, the first hour of gameplay is them teaching you how to play the game, and then you can go actually play the game. But we open it and close it, and we'd start a save as like Real Madrid and Barcelona, right? But then we would go a day, and we're like, I don't know what's going on, and when we leave it. There was a point, and I have no idea when that was. It was pretty soon after the knee surgery where I opened it, and I was like, the easiest thing to do
is probably start as a really like a good team in a bad league.
Yeah.
And just give myself like a lot of like I'm going to win the league either way if I do nothing. And I just put like a basic formation out there. So on FM14, like 2 years after that game came out, I started a save with Celtic, which was just I'd just been to like Scotland, and Fox had the rights to the Scottish Premier League, so I knew who Celtic was, and I knew that they just blew everybody out. They were on like an invincible season that year.
Yeah.
I just started as them, and because it was so freaking easy to win, I just kind of kept playing. And then 12 or 13 years in, I won the Champions League. But there's what's weird to me is like I don't remember how it actually started. I don't remember the moment where I was scrolling through my Steam library and I'm like, this is the time that I'm going to open FM and like not stop playing FM. But that was it. And then but well before I actually won the Champions League, I was completely hooked on the game. You know, we went on a huge family trip in Morocco, and the whole time I was, you know, my brother they were both invested in what was going on. I made the Champions League final. I played PSG, and while we were in Morocco, I was playing PSG we lost 1-0, and they were like, oh, you know, it was this whole thing. And after that, I was hooked. Then I bought 17, and I've bought every one since. Because by the time I finally played out 14, I was like 3 years after it come out.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I mean, I think we probably started playing at a similar time then, because my first was on the back end of 17. I was in university at the time, and one of the co-hosts for the podcast, Nahyan, or Thermal as his Twitch name and Twitter name is, he was into the game as well. So it's good to see you coming from that sort of similar beginning. But then I guess it takes a turn when you obviously decide to stop playing it as someone who's, you know, just playing a game, to then stream it to however many people are going to decide to come along. When did you decide to start streaming that, and was it the first thing you streamed?
No, and it was the same friend who we were seniors in college. We went to different schools, but he helped me build a computer. Like, my brother is really into this stuff, and I am. It's like the gaming trio. And my best friend since we were like 6 years old. Yeah. And he built the computer. He was the first one to take the jump. Then he helped my brother build a computer. And then finally, I think we were trying to buy a game. I promise this ties into the streaming. We were trying to buy a game, and it was PC only, and I'd had a Mac for years. And I was like, you know what? This is the time. Like, this is... I'm done. I will spend the $1,000. Buy me show me what parts to buy, and we'll build it. I played no part in the actual building of the computer, but we get it built. And when we get it built, he's like, yo, like, you know what Twitch is? Like, this was right around the time that Shroud clicking heads and PUBG was kind of blowing up. This was before the whole Fortnite thing, and the whole Fortnite thing, you know, the thing that took over the world. But so he's like, yeah, this like Twitch, like when we're gaming together, we can just stream it. So he, in a way that I would never do, right? He figures out how to set up and connect a stream to Twitch, and he figures out OBS, and he figures out like all of this stuff. And his stream looked a lot cooler than mine at the beginning. I mean, it still does. He's never touched it, but it's got all these cool alerts and stuff. And he had it. I was like, wow, that's so cool. So we started, like, we would be playing a game on the game, stream it. No, but it was like, it's a cool feeling, like, oh, this gameplay is going to be broadcast out to the world or something. And it would just be broadcast out there. And then there was a point where another one of those like creation of life moments where I don't exactly remember how it happened, where I just decided to stream when he wasn't playing one time. And the decision was, all I knew about streaming was Shroud. I didn't go on Twitch. I didn't use Twitch. I didn't watch Twitch. I didn't watch YouTube content, especially around Football Manager. I had never heard of any of the people that are my friends now. I was coming from this angle of, okay, I'm going to stream on Twitch. It's like kind of fun. I want to see if I can interact with somebody. I don't know. And I was like, well, what game am I good at? Right? Because the only thing I know about Twitch is Shroud is just the best at PUBG, and so that's why he's streaming this game. I'm like, well, I'm kind of bad at most video games, but I spend like all of my day playing Football Manager because you can play it in college lectures, and then I'd be watching TV, and it's the perfect game to play while you're watching TV. I literally had this little trash can, and I had a TV on the coffee table in the middle of my apartment senior year, and this little trash can that we used as a table, and I would like bring it in front of the TV and just put my laptop on it and just play FM and watch TV. Nonstop. And the trash can had some character. It had a dent in it from when I failed to qualify for the Champions League on the last day of the season.
I broke a desk. Yeah.
Yeah, with West Ham, that was rough. My girlfriend was like, "What is like? You're in a terrible mood today," and I know. I'll see you tomorrow.
We bottled it.
Oh, yeah. I need a stiff beer right now. Yes, probably more than that. Need a little more firepower. Yeah, it was rough, but I just always played FM, and so streaming, you've got to be good at the game that you're playing. I was like, okay, I'm going to stream FM. I just started doing it, and then it didn't really like take off. But there were a few people there, right? I mean, I was, and this is just a phrase that everybody, I was another like 5-10 viewer Andy. You know, I'd get up to 10. I would hang out around 4 or 5 same people it's literally just hanging out with a couple of dudes. Like,
I can relate to that. That brings back some memories of when I started.
it's just like, yeah, you turn it on, and the big thing at the beginning was like, you know, I would have a starting soon screen, and I was just hoping that there would be somebody there by the time I got off the starting soon screen. You know, I mean, I was that guy for a while, and that was nice. And I remember one time, you know, I couldn't fall asleep. I was so excited that 50 people were following, and I'm like, there are 50 people that are like relying on me for entertainment, right? There are 50 people following the thing. And like, that's so cool. You know, I make Twitch affiliate, and I mean, everybody, when they make Twitch affiliates, just like, oh my God, yes.
I was like, I'm rich now.
Like, I have made the big time. You put it in your Twitter bio. Please don't do that. You later find out that the Twitch affiliate program is literally just there because it costs them like $3 to like monetize your account, like by doing the processes. And so they literally just have the affiliate program so they don't lose money by monetizing every account. Like it's literally the bare minimum that they created. But yeah, I mean, celebrate your little successes for sure, but it's definitely not like do not think that
don't put it on your resume, boys.
Yeah, it would put it on your resume. Yeah, somebody looks it up, they're going to be like, oh, because that's what it says when you look it up. And I hit that, and I just kept streaming, and for some reason, never stopped. I mean, this was like March 2018, and I was doing a lot of things. I was traveling all over the place. I went to Australia and New Zealand for a month. I freaking brought my computer. I stopped at every airport because I thought I had a bomb, because it was literally just like one of those boxes with wires in it. And they're like, what do you, excuse me? Bring out the bomb sniffing dogs, dudes, and like, you know, that one dude in the shades that's like staring at you like he's about to take you out or something. And I'm like, look, man, I'm really tired.
I would try my spreadsheet football game, bro.
I try and stream from these hotel rooms, and it just wouldn't really work. And I tried everything. I did everything. And it really didn't show a lot of progress. And I don't know why it took me so long to figure out what works on Twitch and YouTube and stuff, because I'd like to think that I'm a smart person, but I really made every single mistake possible before figuring out how to do it.
Yeah.
Like stream every day. I was like, oh, if I can just join a stream team. Like, I didn't know how Twitter works. Like, if I join a stream team, then they'll tweet this out from the Big FM Base account. And then, you know, a bunch of people will start, you know, coming in.
with favors.
Yeah, but of course that doesn't work either. So like, I did all this stupid stuff. I just kept going, and I'm really just kind of getting into the story of the whole thing. But I know the question was how I got into streaming, and it was that friend. And then one day I started playing a game I thought I was good at, And I just didn't stop. Like, I just kind of kept going because I guess I got addicted to the whatever chemical in the brain gets released when you feel like you're being watched. I don't know.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, it's interesting you bring that out and you bring up, because I was looking at your stats before we started here, and I was looking at 2019, early 2019, and they were the same numbers as a lot of guys who I know who are in this sort of community, and it's good to see that progress in your face, because you have people like who are also at the top of sort of FM Twitch, like Benji, Lelujo, to name a couple that work the space as well, who had that YouTube audience, and it's hard to monitor that, or to see how the narrative's progressing, and you can do that with yourself. So I guess a good question for now would be, what were those sort of mistakes? How did you break that sort of stratosphere? Because I know a lot of guys who probably really want to know the answer to that question with how their current streams are sort of running.
I will tell you that you either get it or you don't. And I don't mean that like everybody can get it eventually. I certainly did a bunch of things that if I was watching it now, I'd be like, this guy doesn't get it. Like, but if you want to the key is branding. Okay. That is the key. And that is the one thing that for some reason I implicitly understood. I think my mom raised me really well on this, because from a very early time in social media, she was like, everybody can see this, this is going to affect your ability to get jobs. And so I had a pretty good sense of like, don't tweet when I'm hammered, right? Like, don't tweet crazy ideas, like these half-baked ideas about things I don't know what I'm talking about, right? Like, just general rules. Don't just curse up a storm no matter what. Don't be mean to people on the internet nonstop. And getting this idea of how you're perceived by other people. And I think my life had prepared me for that. I worked in TV, and so this understanding of like how other people are seeing you. A couple of things I always understood, and this is not a trap that most people fall into, but it's like the follow for follow stuff. You always hear people bash that. And right, what you're trading with the follow for follow stuff is like short-term fake gain for potential long-term growth, right? Like you're cashing in for, I want this number to be higher. Because but if you're doing follow for follow, you're just implying like if you want to be me, right? You don't watch me because I ask you to watch me.
Yeah.
But you watch me because you think it's going to be a good time, or it's part of your day, or it's entertaining, or it's fun, or you just really love ODFC. You love the story. You love the bad jokes. You like, and everybody's got their own favorite thing. Everybody's got their own favorite player. Everybody, like, you'll watch me not because I asked you to, and you're not like, you're there because I'm the television show of the day, right? Yeah. And there's something about streaming and YouTube where you're like, you are a television show, but there is a greater connection there. And a lot of times it's parasocial, like you all know me, but I don't know all of you, but I still have that interaction with like chat, which sometimes does feel like literally one person that you're just kind of communicating with. So I think the key to allowing yourself the opportunity to grow is understanding like, what is an effective way to make people want to watch you without you? Because everybody that's sitting there with 5 viewers wants to sit on top of the mountain in front of the world and go, please watch me. Please. Like that's what I want to do that too all the time. But it just doesn't work like that. Because how many times do you watch somebody because they're like, yo, bro, like I just like I'm like 3 followers away from, this. But that's why I don't put a lot in milestones. Because that it and I have no problem with people that do, but really underhype milestones. Even the 100,000 subscriber thing, people are doing all this stuff, and I'm always like, look, like if I stopped making videos 5 months ago, I would have eventually hit 100,000 subscribers. Like that isn't necessarily the point.
Yeah.
Right, because it would have been a lot slower, right? But it would have gotten there.
Yeah.
I'm trying to explain it. I've never successfully properly explained this, but figuring out what people want to watch and then providing that.
Yeah.
And I realized, and I mean, no offense, because FM Scout just kind of makes a different type of content than I do generally, because obviously we go for a very high level of production, and they get a video out every day, and they're able to tackle more topics than I am. They always are. But I remember watching them and I'm like, this is the only person that's doing tutorials. If you want to learn how to play Football Manager and you Google how to do this, you're going to get FM Scout, and it's going to be Jamie, who's not there anymore, sitting there in front of a screen going, like this for 20 minutes. I'm like, what if this was my golden idea? What if I did that, but like actually made it good or so entertaining, or like, I don't mean good in terms of like effective, but I mean like a high quality video that also happens to teach you how to play FM.
Like, even if you don't want to learn what the topic is, you're still going to watch it.
That is definitely a new development, because that is not what I was. That wasn't what I was trying to appeal to at the beginning. Because all the videos I made for the first 6 or 7 months were designed to be something. Like, if you look back at the titles, it's like something somebody would look up about how to play FM.
Yeah.
And that was how am I going to get people to watch me without just sitting here kind of begging for people to watch me? Like, how am I going to make it a natural thing that you're going to watch me? And so I started doing the intros, because I'm like, okay, I'm doing tutorials. That's inherently pretty boring.
Yeah.
So if I want people to watch the stream, which I do, because streaming is more fun than making YouTube videos. It's always more fun than making YouTube videos. I need to inject personality in this. And I reverse engineered it to where, like, when I was watching somebody on YouTube and I clicked on the link to go to their Twitch, why? Like, why did I do that? Yeah. And the one that got me was Harris Heller. I don't know if you know who that, like the Alpha Gaming guy.
I'm not familiar now.
He has like 600,000 subs. I started watching him and he had like 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, which was like 2 or 3 years ago. The dude just blew up. And I remember watching his videos, and they're tutorials about like how to stream, like how to see, how to light things. What's the best camera? So who cares? Like, if this dude's playing Apex, right? Like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter. Why would I want to watch that? Yeah. Yet I found myself, after watching 5 or 10 videos, I'm like, I clicked on the Twitch link and I followed him and I watched him all the time. And I'm like, okay, well, why did I do that? And I straight up just copied his style initially. If you watch my early videos, like, it's just Harris Heller on Football Manager, because I was just like, so I clicked on that because I thought he was a cool person. I thought he was chill. He talked about things. He cracked some jokes. They weren't all good, but you felt like you were sitting there talking to him and he was explaining this thing. Yeah. And so that's what I went for. And then the intros were part of that, because I'm also more insane than Harris Heller. He is just an objectively very chill dude. I am spastic, abruptly loud, and like, borderline insane. Like, I break into songs and accents just randomly. Like, these things just happen. And so the intros that come out of that, I film them live, and people are like, well, how much planning goes into the intros? And I'm like, I literally sit down and I'm like, what can I do today? And I'll just go in my driveway and like, kick a ball over a garage. And I'm like, I'm going to teach your striker how to finish today. And that was like the biggest hit of all the intros ever. In that kind of introduction of personality, but you also have to make sure that you're right, like you're saying the right things, and like, this is how you play. You can't just lead people into a wall and be like, yeah, but it was funny though. That was, I think, that what kind of broke the system was, not only was I making these tutorials, but I like accidentally at first figured out how social media works, where I'm like, I'm providing value here. I'm also introducing myself while providing this value. And then I'm remonetizing that value, and like you wanting to hang out with Twitch. And then it just like feeds through. So yeah, that's how you become a giant streamer. That's
how you become top dog, boys. I've been making notes. I've got my Fortnite notepad filled after that one, and I see we're getting towards the time where you may need to dash. So I'm going to just sort of bring things to.
You can ask more questions about that. I'm feeling less tired than I expected to.
Cool. We'll carry on then. So, I mean, level with me. When you were in those early days of streaming, How many times was at least one of the viewers you on another device? Because I know I did that, and I know plenty of other guys did that, just so it looked like at least one person was watching the stream.
Yeah. No, I tested that. Well, I had a girlfriend for like 3 years. It ended amicably because every time I say that, somebody's just like, "Dude, I am so sorry." I'm like, "No, it ended amicably."
Yeah.
At the time, she was like, he streams whatever, and so she would like have it up on her computer in the other room. I'm like, if you could just do me a solid and have it up on the computer in the other room. I would have it up on my phone. I would have it up behind the stream, but my computer wasn't powerful enough to like do that when FM would. So then I would close it. No, I totally did that. But I think that's one of those things that you do early when you just kind of don't. I mean, but the good thing about that is that doesn't actively hurt you. Like you're not actively hurting yourself. Like if you start buying view bots, you are actively hurting your channel because then there's a bunch of people there and nobody chatting. But if you just like you open one or two screens just so that number isn't zero, like that's okay. Like
I was just curious because I know I definitely did it in the earlier days when I was streaming.
Oh, all the stupid streamer stuff. Yeah, I've definitely done it.
I just wanted to see. I guess that's something that we can definitely relate on. So I guess obviously from the streaming you managed to obviously build the channel, and then along comes, maybe not so chronologically as I'm making out, the FM Streamer Showdown. And I mean, I think us at Wasted Possession owe a lot to the Streamer Showdown because that's what we're doing now. We're doing that on a scale which provides that sort of competition for streamers who aren't as big as the guys who are in there, so sort of everyone in the space can get involved. How did that come about for you?
I firmly believe this might be one of the biggest legacies that I end up leaving on the world because I know how big it could be and how cool it will be 10 years from now when there's a streamer showdown in person in London and it's just rowdy and it's fun. We know where that's headed. I mean, like talking to KFC, and I'm not the business side of that. That is Ben.
Yeah.
Ben is the brains behind it. The original happened, but what I'm saying about my greatest legacy is that the original way that it happened, for the historical record, is I sent a message to Fox in the Box. And this is from my perspective. I sent a message to Fox in the Box, and I'm like, hey. And this is right around when my YouTube was at 35,000. And I always liked Fox. He's a good streamer. He makes good YouTube videos.
Definitely.
I sent him a message. I'm like, like we should do something, but on stream. Like not just a YouTube collaboration. We should like stream a save together or something. And then we were one of those correspondences over the internet where like he responds 2 weeks later and then I respond a week later. It's one of those things. And it's like, yeah, well, maybe this, we'll talk about it later. Maybe this, we'll talk about it later. Like, well, when would you want to start it? I don't know. It's really hard to sync streaming schedules too, because it's such a long amount of time. And eventually, after this, Fox sent a message. He was like, yeah, Ben had been talking about wanting to do something too. So if we just like set up a group message. That was what Fox said. And so Fox sets up a group message, and it is Fox, Ben, and I. Those three people. And out of that group message, a Streamer Showdown was born. That was essentially then Ben was the visionary. He is a visionary.
Yeah.
And so he's just like, we need to make this bigger. Right. And I'm over here. I'm just like happy to be here. I'm like, okay, sure. Bigger. Yeah.
You're in the back seat, lying down.
I was there. It was like, I wasn't George Washington. Right. I wasn't like at the head of the table, but I was in this like 3-man, I was like John Adams. I was the second president of the United States. I was there. My name was on the founding document. I was in the conversations, but I'm not going to get like the cover of the book cred. The idea bounces around, and eventually we form this. I'm like, okay, the way these things happen. It's like, okay, it's gonna be like a fantasy. What if we did like, okay, hear me out, guys, a fantasy draft, and it's like the three of us. All right, well, why would it just be three? Like, what would we be able to do? Could we get 5, 6, 8 people to do this? And we just like block off a weekend, and we're like, boom. And, we don't have a Twitter account. The Lowdown, which is that super cool show, that exists yet, and it's literally just 8 dudes streaming at the same time, doing a draft, and then playing a league out of that draft, and then playing the tournament out of that. And so the group text produces that. Then we do it one time, and it's just this like massive success. The final was the dream final at the time, which was a penalty shootout between Ben and Lelujo. And a lot of people don't remember this. Ben almost won, and history would be so different if this.
Mate.
Ben was within a penalty shootout of winning the first Streamer Showdown. And another thing that I like people to forget is he blew me out both times I played him in that tournament. I was so bad in the first tournament, which was great because I was definitely the person that they were like hating on really hard. And it created this great kind of turnaround comeback story. But because that was the first time I'd interacted with a lot of those people.
Yeah.
You're like, who is this guy? This American, like, what? And he makes these. He pretends to know everything about the game I'm gonna show. They're like pretty bad. But the first tournament was this huge success. The lowdown starts with the second tournament, and then it just took off. Yeah. And then it got really formalized. But there hasn't been one for a couple of months because of one was scheduled, and then there was like health issues popped up for people, and it was like, okay, so they're. And then there was the Euros, and they're like, well, we're not going to run one during the Euros. So for those that were worried about the Streamer Showdown, like it is definitely still very much alive and well, and it'll be back soon. But it grew into, a business, really. The lowdown was the key idea. And then the development of the lowdown, the development of the quality of the production of the whole thing. And then we all got layouts, and now we have layouts with like those tickers on them that automatically update. And now there's like this whole team behind the scenes. So it as something gets added every time. But the original genesis of it was a group text between Fox and Ben and I talking about trying to stream something together. And then it just
enough. See, I can resonate with that story really well, because when it comes to Wasted Possession, one day I was just streaming, and Stick Piano, a fellow American streamer, was quite regular in my chat, and there was another guy, I think his name was Ed, who ended up not coming along with us. Chief Rish, another American, and my friend Nahyan, we were in my stream, and Ed just said, wouldn't it be great if we just were to start a podcast? From that chat, we started the Wasted Possession podcast. At the same time, McKinn's FM, I think you might have rated him a couple of times. He was looking at starting his own drafting sort of weekly. So we decided, you know what, we can partner on that. We'll set it up. So we built that. Season 1 of the Wasted Possession draft was born. And then from that, we now have the commentary channels, and we're trying to, get that sort of opportunity for the guys who obviously aren't, maybe not at a point where they're going to be looking at getting an invite to the Streamer Showdown yet, essentially. We try and keep it range. We have Buster Net at the top, who's probably the most followed guy who's taking part. It was announced today, so I can say that. But then we also have guys who have just made affiliate in there, and it's really good. And I just wanted to hear what your opinion was on these draft competitions popping up, like the playoffs, the Super League, the Works Cup.
It's great. Well, here's the thing. When nothing like this existed before Streamer Showdown happened, but then as always, just look at this is not analogous, and I'm not saying that it's all a similar trajectory, but just look at the way soccer professionalized and like the sport, one league was made. And then all of a sudden everybody was like, well, shoot, that's cool. We want to do that too. And then everybody was like, and now all of a sudden there's a bunch of different leagues all over the place, and they're like, wait, bro, we need to organize this. And then it became, so that it's kind of happened the same way, where like we took the step because we had the resources to kind of pull off the idea without, wasting anybody's time too much. Cause we knew it was probably going to be a fun thing. We had no idea that it would become the main staple on the calendar of like all FM Twitch. Is like, when is the Streamer Showdown happening? I think all the other things are great. Initially we were kind of like, at least me being very competitive, I'm like, whoa, bro, you trying to compete with us? Like the first one that I saw, I'm like,
it was obviously ours, right?
Well, it wasn't like I see. I don't even remember what that first one was that I saw like pop up, like FM draft playoff, whatever. I don't know. I'm really bad at like paying attention to that sort of thing. Anyways, I don't know. My Twitter notifications are off, so sometimes I just miss a day and something just flies right over my head. But there was that voice in the back of my head that was like, "I will crush you," and I'm like, no, like this is cool, because it's always been that has to deal with the people like, I should be in the Streamer Showdown, and I'm like, well, it's not a competition, it's a show, right? It is a competition for the people that are in it, but it's like it's the MLS. It's a show to try and get it off the ground, so that you got to have people that are bona fide names for one reason or another that are there.
Of course.
And that for those that are ever offended by the decision making process or who he invites or that sort of thing, that's the only thought process that goes into it. It's not how good you are in the game. It's just kind of, are you able to sit there and take Ben making fun of you for 20 minutes, and are you able to be funny while that's happening? Like, that's essentially the threshold. People generally kind of need to know who you are before then. But I think all the other competitions are great, and not the smallest reason, because it's really fun.
It is.
The drafting, and just with your friends sitting there, and you're just taking the piss the whole time. Like, it is just so fun. And it's
one of them, like the time as well. Like, every Friday, I know for a fact, on my Friday evening as a 23-year-old man, unideal, I'm going to be spending anywhere between 7 and 5 hours preparing, commentating. And I know that during the week, like, I've started to build a sort of database so we can have, how are these guys competing head to head, X person and X person, this is how many times they've played, this is how many goals X has scored, that sort of thing.
That was Ben's brilliant. That's Ben's baby right there. It's all those stats.
I'm adopting him.
Yeah.
But like it's the work that goes into it. It has to be a good product and fun for everybody to be involved in order to pull off.
Yeah, and look, continue to innovate, because the Streamer Showdown is already, it's going to continue to be awesome and entertaining. I'm going to continue to be in it when I'm asked to be. I'm a founding member, actually, and so I have the ability to like go to Ben and be like, "Hey, man." Yeah. I'd be like, I do have like some stake in it, other than just being a competitor, which is nice. But it is definitely constrained in some facets. By being a corporate enterprise now. It is. There is money flowing through it from the corporation side of it. And so does the Premier League, and it's still really fun to watch. It's not like this is a problem, but at the same time, like, you have to go to, whoever's sponsoring the event. And this isn't necessarily a KFC thing. It's been other people too, where you go like, can we do this, or is this okay? So the other competitions also are great in that you have the opportunity to innovate in a way that the Streamer Showdown might be limited in certain areas and ways to innovate. Now, I still think right now the Streamer Showdown has kind of like the monopolized weight up. I do believe that could change, or it could shift. But I think the Streamer Showdown is always going to be like, hopefully, right, is always going to be huge and up there. But I think it's a good thing that there are a lot of other competitions.
And I guess it's funny you talk about the sort of innovation side, because obviously us, the Super League, and the FM playoffs are all partnered now. So if you win one of the other one competition, you get an auto invite to the others, and we're all sort of kind of working together in the background and having that in. And I guess when it comes to you guys bringing even just one person in, I guess when you have that corporate side, you have to vet them, you have to be careful and make sure that they stand for what you are after. And then in that regard, and obviously,
there's one that was just like so funny, where it's like, oh dude, we have to actually pay for this stuff now. You probably already know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about. I think I was live at the time, but we have four.
Sorry. And I was like, I know that's. Oh man,
it was bad. But I guess I don't know. Maybe a wake up call for you guys. We don't necessarily have to do that. And even then, like, if, say, anything was... Say, for example, tomorrow, the FM Streamer Showdown was like, we're going to partner with these smaller draft leagues and premierships. We have this season 32 people involved, because we have 2 Challenger leagues, which are 8 leagues, and the top 2 of each go through. We have automatic invites and invites that come from application, which make another I think maybe 16 or 12 people, and then that goes into a group stage, and then there's a finals. So our process is a 6-week, and then that causes you. I mean, if that was to happen, all of a sudden you guys are having to maybe vet up to 70, 80 Twitch channels in order to see if it's worthwhile for you guys, and have that sort of security when there's that involved. So I see what you mean by having those difficulties, maybe in terms of adapting and having that creative control over the product.
So the question of, there are 2 types of FIFA tournaments that happen in the world. There is the FIFA tournament where KSI is playing, Drake or something.
Yeah.
And then the FIFA tournament where it's like, the actual best FIFA players in the world. And I feel like the direction it might go, and I'm not saying this is, I've talked to nobody about this. I'm not saying this is like even the thought process, but I feel like in terms of projecting out to the future, that the showdown becomes kind of like this spectacle.
Yeah.
And then because the showdown exists and creates more interest and like, oh, competitive FM, like what is that about? And then all of a sudden this league system springs up where like, that's the actual competitive FM scene where like you get promoted, you get relegated, you win leagues. Like I've always been interested about whether competitive FM could work on a large scale. Like, could you actually have FM for FIFA basically? Because there is RNG. It's like playing poker, like being a professional poker player, essentially playing FM at a really high level, because I don't care how many, tactics Nap makes and tests, you can still beat Nap if like I'm pretty sure I have in the FM Streamer Showdown based off of some of the tactics I've run into. But anyways, the idea that you create this large competitive scene is interesting, and I think it will test the Streamer Showdown in like the direction that it wants to go. Is the Streamer Showdown going to be a thing where you get relegated out of it and promoted into it?
Yeah.
I, for one, I might even vote against that, at least right now, because if I get relegated, I don't want to not be in the Streamer Showdown.
Yeah, exactly. And also, it's different when there's streamers, because, for example, if I'm a streamer, I've got a decent fan base, and all of a sudden, it turns out I'm shit at the game, and I'm in the bottom division. I might not be very happy about that. There's that aspect as well.
It's one of those things, and then I think that Football Manager, well, he can exist as a competitive.
Yeah.
And I hope that it does online. But I think what makes it magic, and what I always loved about Football Manager, is that they hide the way the game actually works. And so you can't sit there and actually figure out what the right move is. You can guess, right? You can use thousands of hours of playing experience to go, well, center mid on attack is just better than center mid on support when I put these roles on it because X, Y, and Z. But you don't have the numbers to know that that's the right decision.
Yeah.
Where something like, if you're playing League, right? And I'm stepping into an area where I'm not super familiar, but
I'm familiar with League.
I've watched enough the Score esports documentaries to feel like I can step in here and say, like, you can mathematically figure out if I hit this guy this many times from this position with this move, this dude is dying, right? Yeah. Like, or like if I use this move, and that's what these people are doing, is like they have a really good feel for the math on like, I can do this and this and this and this, and I won't die because they can't do enough damage to me or something. You can't really do that in FM. And so there will always be the segment of a competitive FM where you got FM'd.
Yeah.
Right. And but the beauty of FM is that it mimics the real game. And sometimes, right, like sometimes South Korea beats Germany. And that's why we love it. But, if you are Germany in an esports sense, you're a little peeved that you didn't win this grand prize because you went out here and, lost to South Korea, who had like 2 shots on target, even though you outclassed them. So that is always the complicated thing to address, I think. And what makes it really interesting. That's why I think the showdown would probably go to some sort of like adaptive system where like if you win those competitions, then you can like get Willy Wonka's golden ticket to be in the Streamer Showdown. But at the same time, like, the familiar faces. And if we're like, in a completely honest sense, like the television entertainment side of the Streamer Showdown, which would be like Ben and Lelujo and I and Jack and FNG and Manny and, you know, James Alcott. And I'm just terrified I'm going to forget somebody, and it's going to Spencer, and I'm going to
it's one of them. If me with my current 200 followers on Twitch was to replace someone like you based on performance, KFC would probably be a little pissed off about that.
They would not be. Well, I had like a final on one day, and Ben had to have a meeting. It was like one of those things where I had been in like 4 or 5 consecutive showdowns. I'd avoided relegation, which is usually like if you get relegated, you kind of just don't show up to the next one.
Yeah.
But I had avoided it dramatically a couple times. So I'd like managed to keep myself competitive in it. And I told him, I was like, I'm not going to be there. And he's like, brother, we need you for this one. It was like, you know, it was what is the equivalent of a contract year or something.
Yeah.
So that was the first time I was like, oh, this is like a business thing. And I'm like a part of this, you know, like this business thing, because Ben and I are really good personal friends. I don't think that's what a lot of people understand. Like,
I mean, you have a good podcast. I'll give you that.
But the podcast is actually our like weekly time to get together. We'll finish the podcast and then talk for like 3 hours after that.
Yeah.
And just hang out and shoot the breeze. And it's funny because that stuff works its way into his stream sometimes, because somebody told me he was looking up housing prices in Detroit. And I'm like, that was what we were talking about like the day before, because he was losing his mind about housing prices. And I'm like, look up a 3-bedroom house in Detroit, a fifth of the price of anything anywhere in England. And it's amazing. But yeah, we're really tight personal friends. But there was this business kind of part to the Streamer Showdown that's new, because this is a pretty lone wolf industry most of the time. And you're in charge of your own business. You know, you're always negotiating with some brand that's being annoying or whatever. But you're operating it by your own. The Streamer Showdown is my only piece of kind of collectivized business so far. And that was an interesting realization. But that's another thing, is like, you want to be connected. You want it to be competitive. You want there to be repercussions for losing, right? And before, the repercussions were just, you're not in the next one. All right, like if you just suck that much, just get out. But like in a true sense of just, you know, just taking it out, like taking the piss out of it. You know, you finish last, like leave. But you have to balance that desire with, you also need to put on the show that people are going to want to watch.
Yeah.
And want to watch in a way that like it's entertaining, in the same way that I would rather watch, like, I won't normally watch chess. I would watch Barack Obama and Vladimir Putin play chess.
I'd be all over that.
Yeah. But if it's like 2 random dudes in a park in New York City, like, I'm not going to watch that. And so I don't know. I'm trying. It's on the branding side of things now, where I'm trying to explain this in a way where you kind of understand all of the different dynamics.
I mean, I can somewhat relate to it, and it's given me a lot of sympathy to what you guys are doing, because when we have our applicants for, you know, season 4, we're just getting underway now. For us, you know, we had about 50, 60 applicants of people coming in. There obviously wasn't that many places, and we want to hit big guys in to help grow what we're doing, the guys who've been in there since day one, guys who we haven't had in there, guys who are smaller and could do with an opportunity that they're not going to get from any other competitions, because they're predominantly invite only, which is where our challenger leagues come into play. And when you have to balance that and hit every single criteria, and you know someone's going to be unhappy, like someone this season was not very happy that they didn't make the cut. And
somebody's always mad.
You have so many, you know, we ended up having, how many hours have you streamed this month? That was the sort of the final variable on whether you got in or not. And somebody hadn't been streaming FM for the month, and they didn't end up making the cut. And, you know, people don't get happy about that. And balancing that, and then having, if we were to have that business entity over the top of us, we'd probably have to cut the giving guys who aren't going to get the opportunity out, and then that goes against everything that we initially stood for. So I have my sympathy with you guys when it comes to sort of that screening process, because it's so hard.
there's this final element of, you mentioned guys that deserve an opportunity, and this is somebody I almost mentioned earlier because he's just literally the prime example of what I'm talking about. Clates. Like, what do you think of when you think of Clates?
I think of, where did he come from? I think the Banisher of Kevin. Let's get that out there first. I think he steps up quite well for them.
Thank goodness. Man.
Oh man, I think Kevy 5 times is as far as I could have gone, but
I cannot stand it. I actually, like, when I realized I would get knocked out or something, and then I would just turn it off. So I was like, he's gonna freaking win, and I don't want to watch it, and I would just turn it off. As a competitor, I could not stand the fact, and I dominate him in the league. Like, I can't remember the last time he beat me.
Yeah.
But I never get to play him in the knockouts, and he always. This is just a side note.
Yeah, no, go for it.
On Kelvin, who we can talk about a lot, but congrats to him for getting to 100,000 on his FM channel too. Kevy 2 plaques, I believe, is the latest crown he has placed upon his head. Yeah, another one. He's DJ Khaled. Honestly, seems like a nice. It's a good one, but the thing about Clates is I knew who he was because he was in the FM based stream team with me back in another lifetime.
Yeah,
and that was when we were both, in that 5 to 10 viewer. There are a few people that watch us just because they ran into us randomly from something, but that's it. And I rode this rocket up, but Clates just got it. Like, if you watched a Clates stream with 5 people, 1,000 people could have been watching that stream.
Yeah. And
you wouldn't have been, oh, that's interesting. Like, when the first time you watch XQC, you're like, this is weird. Why are there this many people here? Right? But then you watch, like, a Shroud stream, and you're like, this makes sense.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about, like, the ability. I'm talking about the visual audio quality. The way he interacts with the stream is so fluid that everything makes sense. And his demeanor is right. It's toned to the right spot. And when you watch a Shroud stream, you're just like, this makes sense. Like, I understand exactly why there are this many people here, or Summit, or Tim the Tapman. You're like, this makes sense. Or Dr. Lupo, or Ludwig is another great example. When you watched Clates, it felt like that. Yeah. And I remember there was a season 4 or season 5. Ben finalized his list of, like, who should be in there, which is something I have actively avoided participating in because I just don't want to be like dealing with that. Because like you said,
you don't want the heat. We got the heat.
I step right out of that particular role. And so he finalized the list, and Clates was on it. And all I said to him, I sent him a message, and I was like, so you see it too, right? And he was like, yeah. Like, there are people that get it, and Clates has always gotten it. Yeah. In terms of how to present yourself and I'm not perfect. I honestly think Clates might be better than me in a lot of senses when it comes to how to present yourself on stream, how to handle certain things. Because sometimes I go on a tangent and I'm like, Zealand, where are we going? Why are we going here? Like, and Ben will do the same thing, or Lelujo, or like Jack will do the exact same thing. But there are certain people, and that's right. You don't know you've gotten it until you've already crossed that threshold, and you can kind of pick out other people, and you're like, it just makes sense. Like 1,000 people could be watching Clates right now, and it would check out. You'd be like, okay, that makes sense, right? Yeah. He looks perfect on camera. He's got the perfect FM geek vibe with the glasses, right? Camera's perfect. He's got I don't even know how he does this like webcam shake thing when you follow. Like, it's crazy. It's perfect. And obviously some of that takes money, but on the other side, I spent no money setting up my stream initially. I just taught myself how to like make that stuff. Yeah. And then be able to set it up, and then it just became cool. And apparently after I crossed that threshold, Ben was like, I saw it with you too. And I was like, that's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. You're definitely lying. Okay.
Let me hit record and say it again.
Yeah, hit record, please. No, and then that's the sort of thing I'll play back to him. Like during the streamer showdown, be like, see, you love me. It is a thing that on the Streamer Showdown side, they're still looking for. Because Clates had like, I don't know, 15, 20 viewers at that time. But Ben was just like, he would be able to step right into the showdown, won't miss a beat, and it'll be entertaining. It'll be good. It'll be a quality stream, and that'll be it. So it is possible to kind of make it before you make it, in a sense.
Yeah, it resonates a lot as well with someone who a lot of the audience will know, Mr. Diz. He was someone who, I guess you kind of have different sides of Twitch FM where it seems like certain people will know certain people. I think it's just dependent on location and stream timing. And Diz was someone who was, particularly in season 1 of the Wasted Possession drafts, was very much linked with us. He'd just drop into the Discord while we were in it. It was super unprofessional. We'd all be in the same Discord chat just talking. And Diz would just come in and he'd go one by one through the competitors. And when it came to me, he just absolutely rinsed me for being absolutely dreadful at the game and not having won one of them. But you could kind of see with him, he had that sort of showmanship. So when he did make it onto, the Lowdown and others, when it came to the FM Streamer Showdown, it wasn't really a surprise for anyone. And I think he sort of is that, he's sort of that same mold, if you know what I mean.
I agree on most things. Diz, if you're listening, I talked about this when I was talking to Diz. Because he asked, I don't want to say the same questions, but we talked about similar things, at least when it came to like being a creator. That was my previous attempt to explain what the it factor is, which I'm undoubtedly still failed to do. But you got to fix your thumbnails, dude. Like they're better than they were. But the huge hole, I think, in Diz's game is his thumbnails. And I know it's really annoying. I hate Photoshop too, but I figured it out eventually. I know you will too, but the thumbnails is definitely the thing.
To give him credit, they are a lot better than what they were when his first uploads were about.
Yeah, they are. No, he's gotten a lot better since then. And since we had that conversation, and I think it's hilarious because I actually watch his videos now. Yeah, and in a very self-interested way. Like he'll drop a 6-minute video that's like, Zealand talks about this, and I'll be like, oh, I don't remember what I said, and I'll be like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I think the other issue with that type of content is how many people are really interested. Yeah, and I know that sounds self-deprecating, but like, I don't know how many people would watch an interview with me, but Diz definitely, he's such a nice guy. And he did a good job putting his stream together and stuff. And Ben was, and he we normally say yes. I don't know. There's like this assumption that we get like we're unreachable. Or so, Ben talks about this sometimes where like you get to a certain point and people stop DMing you.
I think it's because people think you're too big rather than you think you're too big.
I think I can properly express how much I am the same as I'm sitting in really sweaty shorts that I've been wearing at my computer for 3 days. Like I am sitting on my desk is a fold out table that I travel with so that when I'm traveling, I have something to like set my stream up on. Like I am just a dude sitting at their computer, much the same as anybody else who would be watching me is just a person sitting at their computer. And so when I missed, like Diz just sent me a DM. He's like, do you want to do an interview? I'm like, yes. I almost always say yes. Like literally.
It's how we got here. I remember we put a tweet out saying, who do you want to see on next? And not Dali, but Ali, shout out, you secured this, said, get Zealand on. And you then just commented saying, sure. Like, we didn't even ask you, like, in that regard. You came to us.
No, I read all my Twitter mentions and stuff, which, like, I don't know. I think it's cool that, like, people mention you. There was, like, some social justice correspondent like for national TV networks in the US just tweeted like he was on some over-the-counter pain meds or something, so he's like, a little forewarning, I'm a little high, but I really love watching video games on Twitch, and then tagged me as like one of the people he watched, and I was like, what what? So I'm like on this guy's Wikipedia page, like, writing a little insert, huge Zealand stan.
I saw that too. That was quite a good one. But it is one of them. And obviously even before, like, obviously we're looking to get guests in for the podcast and even the drafts. And, there is that sort of, there's no way, Ben's going to say yeah. There's no way Zealand's going to say yeah to take part in sort of the drafting. And you sort of have that idea of, that guy might be a little too big. If someone's on the showdown, then there is that sort of presumption that that's not going to happen. And
no,
I don't know why.
You're just afraid of hearing no, I think, in a lot of ways. I've found that it was Wayne Gretzky, and then if you watch the U.S. version of The Office, Michael Scott said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, which can be interpreted in a way that is incredibly annoying.
Yeah.
You know, with like, I'm just going to tweet at everybody all of the time and try and get somebody to shout me out, right? Or like, I will tweet all of the Kardashians, and maybe, no, they're not, sweetie. They're not gonna respond to you. But taking your shot at like sending cold emails and cold DMs and cold messages, like that is always really, really cool. I cannot express to you how many footballers, soccer players I have slid into the DMs of to attempt to talk to. It has yet to work, but when it does, continue to shoot that shot, because eventually, like, Weston McKennie is just going to see it, and he's going to be like, yeah, dude, cool. Yeah, I've played Football Manager a few times or something. And shooting that kind of shot is just always, I think, it's so important, because so many people don't.
100%. And there's something, again, that did help me with. I was talking about, we're trying to get X person onto the draft, X person onto the podcast. And he was like, just ask him. So then I was like, okay, I'll ask Second Yellow Card if he wants to do a podcast. Boom, episode 1 of the Kickback is Second Yellow Card. Like, it's so much more attainable than people think. But even, like, I've tried it and done it. For some reason, I still think, like, are they outside of my zone? Do you know what I mean? It's weird how the brain works. I'm sure you understand that from, you know, your perspectives that you gave on your sociological background before.
I actually had a very recent experience with this, where I have a friend, long time friend, and they recently had an interaction where, like, I like looked at their picture on a stream. And they got like 100 followers or something, you know, like people like requesting to follow them or something. And they were like, dude, this is weird. And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, yeah, like, I just think of you as like, oh, Zealand, like, you know, that just kid from, you know, school or whatever. He was just like kind of messing with me. And he was like, but all these people think of you as like, oh, dude, that's Zealand. Like, you know. But the thing is, I'd never thought about it that way. That there is like these people, and that's when I hear about these people. Oh, like my brother told me about you, and I'm like, you're having conversations about me. Like, what you don't realize when you cross that threshold to like, oh yeah, like you need help with FM. Like that totally makes sense to me. If you were sitting there and somebody was like, dude, you ever played Football Manager? Or like, I heard you played. Like, how do I get into the game? And you were just like, watch this guy named Zealand on YouTube. But that's just weird to me, is like an individual human being who just throws this stuff out into the ether and doesn't have any like in-person interact. I have had no in-person reckoning with my internet fame ever.
You know, it's funny. It's funny you bring that up, because when we were putting this in development, one of my brothers, I said to him, like, Muzz, I think I might have secured Zealand for the podcast. He doesn't really play FM too much. He doesn't watch any FM content. And he was like, no fucking way, that's so punk, blah, blah, blah. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's weird.
That's ridiculous. Like, that's so... well, and now, I think I always wanted to be famous.
Oh, yeah.
Like from the time I was really young, I was like a child actor, because I was, you know, the same sort of spastic energy, and just like it went really well into, you know, I did Who's On First, like that really funny skit. I've done that from both directions, traveling around a couple of times. So I've done all that stuff, and I obviously worked in TV, and so I always liked and I'm thinking, I'm realizing that the reason I wanted to be famous was that the best part about it is you can exert such minimal effort and make people's days. I mean, like, literally, I can open my DMs right now and reply to somebody, and they'll be like, dude, this is so cool. Like, thank you for replying. And I'm like, you create this situation, and really stop me if I'm sounding vain, because I really try not to, but it's interesting trying to explain what it's like.
I mean, it's one of them, like, you saying this was exactly how I reacted. When you said, sure, I screenshot that, put it in the wasted possession group chat, like, boys, we made it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it's one of the, yeah, it's like, that is also insane to me, because I'm also that person. Like, when Terrence Boyd, who I watched play for the U.S. national team growing up, was like, yeah, dude, I'll come on a video. I like screenshot that. So, you know, I'm like, dude, Terrence. And then I get on the call and Terrence Boyd's like, wow, this is really cool to like talk to you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean it's cool to talk to me? You I watched you slide tackle Andrea Pirlo. Why are you, you know, it's that sort of stuff. But it's like, I'm just the same person. It blows my mind. And it's really nice though, because it is super fun making people's days. And it's like a really nice thing to do. People be like, oh, can you send me a little video for my husband's birthday? He like watches all of your videos or something. And I'll go all out. I mean, I'll pass it through Reese. It'll be like a 2-minute, like I'm in a banana suit, and they'll get it and they're like, this is amazing. Like, this is not what I asked for. And I'm like, well, you know, and just being able, and it just like is this amazing moment. Or like there was a podcast, you know, like kind of a kid just started a podcast, sent me a text, and I was like, yeah, sure. And his little brother was this huge fan. So my mom, when I go home, is also acutely aware of this and has this similar desire to just make people's days. And so I go home and I'll sit down and she'll bring out a box of mugs, and I will sit there and sign the mugs, at like 30 or 40 mugs. And she'll, every time I'm with her, she'll show up with these mugs or something else, and I will sign them. And then anytime she sees somebody in the chat, like with some sort of sweet story, or they do something really nice or anything, she'll message them for their address and mail them a mug. And that's just like what she loves to do. And now it's gotten to the point where I'll be like, I did that podcast. He's like, yeah, my little brother's a huge fan. He brings his little brother into the room to look at me on the Discord call. And his little brother just goes, hits it with one of those, dude. And then his little brother like puts the headphones on and he sits there and he's like, and I'm like, what's up? And he's like, oh, bro. You know, like, and I'm like, Mom, this is the only time I've done it to this point. So I'm like, Mom, we got to send this kid a mug. And so he sent it, you know, she like mailed him a mug, like one of those signed mugs. And he like, his brother sent me a video of him opening it. It's just like, it's so not real. Like, it doesn't feel real, but it has this incredibly real impact on people. And now I think my main desire outside of being able to live comfortably and it is to continue to kind of push this as far as it can go, so that I can do that as much as possible.
Yeah.
So that I can, right, reach people, help people, make people's days. That is just, it's just the best. That is the best part of it. That makes up for all of the people that show up in the YouTube comments like, well, I came here for tactic tips and I got 10 minutes of really shitty jokes. And you're just like, one, true. Yeah. But I also had tactic tips in there. So that part I'm insulted by, you know.
There mustn't have been good tactic tips. But I mean, that brings us on quite nicely to the general way we end the podcast. And generally that is asking, what next for Zealand? Where does Zealand go from this point right now? 5-year frame, 10-year frame, 20-year frame, however long you sort of envisage that?
No, I want to always be making Football Manager stuff. I think in particular that we have kind of found a really wonderful way to do Football Manager streams with the live channel and the episodes, so that if you miss a stream, there's a 30-minute episode that catches you up on everything that you need to know, because Football Manager is all about the story. Jumping into a save 15 years in, you have no idea what the frickety crack is going on. So that the key for me was always like, well, how do I'm building on-ramps. That's literally the way I talk about it when I was hiring these editors. I'm like, we are building on-ramps so that you can watch the stream. And when you watch the stream, you know the stories of the players, because I'm enjoying it so much because I know the stories of, like, I know where Anssi Karolainen came from. I remember seeing him when he was 17 and going, that guy might be pretty good. And now I'm getting $100 million offer for him like 5 years later, and you get that progression.
Yeah.
So that is something that I think I'll always be doing. But I definitely, now that I have kind of got my feet on the ground, I've got an LLC, like Zealand Corp, as I jokingly call it, but I think I named it like Zealand Things LLC. I can't help myself. I shouldn't be allowed in professional settings. It's like Zealand Does LLC Stuff LLC. I can't remember what it's called.
That's quality.
Yeah, and then I have like the editors and everything's like funded, right? We're making enough money to where, nobody's going to go hungry. And what I want to kind of take that into now is HITC Sevens does videos that have always really interested me.
Yeah.
I think. And one of them was, Greenland's National Soccer League or something. If we continue to just make more money and kind of push the envelope, and I start bringing in kind of more sponsors that I don't dislike, and that can fund things, I would love to. I love traveling. Yeah. For those that aren't around the stream a lot, I've been to 30 something countries. And it's like kind of an addiction of mine, like going out, experiencing things, getting into generic trouble in Welsh pubs, just like good times.
Hell yeah.
So I'm moving to New York City with a childhood friend of mine, not the one that's like good at computers, but he is an actor, and he's incredible. He's like a TikTok type funny person. And a very good friend of mine, and what I want to do off of that is like, well, what if we just went to Greenland? Like, what if we just went to Greenland and actually went to the soccer tournament?
Yeah.
Like, and I know HITC Sevens does great work with the research, and like, but what if we just went and we were like, this is the Greenland soccer tournament. Like, here we are sitting on a cliff, eating whale blubber, drinking really, really strong beer or whatever they've got there, watching these dudes just like play on this one artificial turf field in Nuke. Like, what if we just went to that? Or what if we just went to Partizan Red Star? Just the two of us. We just showed up, and we made sure not to wear any colors that were going to get us in trouble. But like, what if we just went to the game? And like, what is that experience like? And so combining the love for travel and the love for the sport, basically, or like, I really, really want to go to the Middle East, because I'm my concentration and for my history degree was Ottoman history. And so I've always found that part of the world really interesting, because in my part of the world, we have a lot of misconceptions about that part of the world.
Yeah.
And so that's always been something that like, it kind of ate at me, and I always dig into things a lot. And so I want to go to like an Afghan league game. There's like this whole story about this one American that was playing in the Afghan league. Like, I want to go out and do that stuff. Or instead of making a video where it's like Sri Lanka is the worst national team in the world, I want to go watch their national team play. They're playing somewhere. They're playing somebody.
To be the worst, you have to actually play.
Yeah, you've got, or like huge derby in CONCACAF that nobody cares about. British Virgin Islands against U.S. Virgin Islands. I want to go watch that. Right? Like, there's freaking 15,000 people in both of those countries, but to those people, that's the Super Bowl. Like, when those teams play in qualifying like every time, and then they're just playing for the right to get beat 20-0 by Jamaica in the next qualifying round. Like that, so that's an idea that's definitely jumped out to me. And I know that's a step into more like generic YouTubing. Yeah. But that's definitely, I think, a direction, particularly on YouTube, I want to go. Then like continue to create like a system of Football Manager tutorials and tips videos, and continue to use Football Manager as this wonderful database to simulate infinite possibilities. Like, who's the better Ronaldo? I can answer that question. I'm having a database right now made where we just take this Real Madrid team and we put prime CR7 and prime fat Ronaldo like on that team in two different universes, sim it for a year, 100 times each. Right? Like, who's better? Yeah. Football Manager. I think you have your limitless videos in those kind of like what if experiments. Like I really wish I wasn't in school for the Euros because I had so many ideas. Like, what if we had a Euros with every team that didn't make the Euros to win? Right? Like, is Norway all of a sudden the king of the world? Iceland's a dark horse? Like, you think of these things when you're like rolling around in bed and you can't go to sleep and you're just like, what if we had a Euros with just every team that wasn't there?
What if you had a Euros where none of the teams were European?
Oh, yeah. Or like, let's put the top 10 teams not from Europe in the Euros.
Yeah.
Right. So you like Mexico, the US, Brazil, Argentina, probably Chile.
I think that might be called the World Cup, to be honest with you.
No, you're right. We're definitely dangerously close to the World Cup. But like, if you put them into Euros qualifying, I think you'd have a lot of like interesting controversy about like how much better is Europe than every other continent.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, I just had a great idea. See, this is the way this happens. What if we took each continent and combined its qualifying with Europe's qualifying? How many teams not from Europe would make it out? So like if you put all of Asia in Europe and did this huge qualify, like would Japan get out? They might not.
Yeah, because obviously you have like in particular like the Asia Oceania, you know Australia are going to be going through, but they're not going to, probably not going to go through in Europe or even the Americas. So yeah, nah. Do you want me to cut this bit out so no one steals your ideas?
Freaking do it, because this is the thing, and this is directly ripped from Harris Heller, but I've definitely created my own vibe separate from him now, but I definitely mirrored him kind of right when I was starting my YouTube career. Yeah. And this is one thing that he says is like, I have no problem at all explaining to you everything that I do and how it works, how much everybody is paid, right? How much like what it takes, what goes into it, because 99% of you probably won't even try to do it. Right? And that, like, that's, and it's not meant to sound harsh or anything, but it's the God's honest truth. Is like, you now have, if you want to be as big as me, you now have to be better than me.
Yeah.
Right? Because now it is easier for me. Right? I don't have to edit my own videos. I don't have to, right? This is like the hard knocks side of the creator discussion.
Yeah.
Is that, yeah, like if you're looking at me and you're like, God, I could do what he does now. Probably. You know, like I do a stream, I send in the thumbnail to my thumbnail guy, I send the stream to my stream editor, and then I go eat a sandwich. Like, you know, because I worked to get to a point where that was possible.
Yeah.
So if those people that do send me messages like, dude, how is this a job? This, whatever you're doing is so easy. I mean, like, I worked and thought of the ideas to get it to that point, but I mean, yeah. So like, but I'm dead serious. If you can do that idea, I probably don't want to compete against. Please message me. If you think you can make that database combining like Asia with Europe for qualifying for like World Cup qualifying, please message me, because that sounds so cool. And I definitely would want to do that. And if you feel like you're capable of that, then yeah, I didn't mean to like use the show.
No.
But
it's really good for the clickbait, that, so I'm not gonna say no.
Fair enough. Yeah. Zealand needs help or something. No, I could do this. That's real.
And then you could save him.
Yeah, what's the job of a YouTuber is actually just coming up with titles. Seriously. It is coming up with titles. Yeah. But that, yeah, I feel like any questions?
I mean, no, do you know, it's...
I'm saying borderline controversial things like nonstop. So please, like, if any clarification is required, it's hard to clarify in the moment.
I like a bit of spice, and I feel like you naturally just sort of went on to questions that I had. So, I mean, great minds think alike and all that, but nah, I'm quite content. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap this bad boy up?
I just feel like that sounded mean. And then like, well, 99% of you won't even try. Like, I just don't like the way that it sounds. But it's one of those things where like,
well, it's perspective, right? It's either you could take that as, oh, Zealand thinks he's better than me, or Zealand's challenging me, and I think it says a lot about the mindset of the individual, who and what way they perceive it.
Oh, I use that sort of stuff as motivation all the time. That actually really helped. Clan has no idea this happened. I've actually never talked about. You want your clickbait? This is it.
Okay, go on.
I've actually never talked about this publicly. I have never talked to Clan about it publicly. You know, like Clano, the streamer.
Yeah.
And there is no reason for me to have been mad at him, but I use this to fuel me for a long time. Or like every time I would think about it, it just lit a fire under me. I sent him a message. And he was actually like, if I was him, I probably wouldn't have even responded to the message. And so, you know, that's honestly like to paint the he did nothing wrong at all.
Yeah.
But it just, this is kind of my competitiveness again, where I sent him a message and I had no idea how Twitch worked. I had no idea how social media worked. And I'm like, hey, man, could you raid me after a stream? Or like, I said host. I didn't know what a raid was. I was like, could I be on your auto host list? Because I found the auto host list and I'm like, well, if I could get on the auto host list of like somebody that streams, then this would be huge. He responds to me super courteously, like, hey, man, probably not. I usually like to know the people that I like host or something. And I'm like, yeah, I think I sent him a message back and I'm like, well, how do I become that person? You know, like super hardo, like, we're going to do this. And then he just like didn't respond, as any reasonable human being would have.
Yeah, I wouldn't have responded to that first message.
Absolutely. And so I'm like, oh, yo, I'll show him. that is always what was like. It wasn't just him. I was always what was in my head. It was just like, there's going to be a day where I'm going to be like, I told you so. Even though he won't even remember that conversation.
Definitely not.
No, not at all. He has no idea that happened, that played any sort of role in my life, and he did nothing wrong. But yet somehow it still was like, there's going to be a moment where I'm sitting there, and there probably was, if like for him, where he was like, wait, is that the guy? Oh, you know, and I worked like late nights for years for that 1-2 second moment where he went, oh, that's the guy. Oh, that's neat. After that moment. And so it's definitely one of those things where somebody listening to this is like, oh man, that Zealand guy, what a jerk. Like he doesn't think I will show him. Please do. We need as many big FM streamers and YouTubers as humanly possible. So prove me wrong and use me as an example that it is possible to in 2 years go from being, because this is always the thing that people say is like, oh, well, you can't grow on YouTube now, or you can't grow on Twitch now, or you can't like, that's complete bull. Yeah. Right. Like if you took Ben and the Lujo and Jack, despite his own jokes about how bad he is at YouTube, and you took and myself and you dropped us into the world with 0 subscribers, we could get back to where we are.
Yeah.
Because of what we know now. It would take some time, you know, but like we could get back to where we are. And I think that always says a lot about, I mean, obviously I can't like prove that because there's no way to remove yourself, you know, everybody in the world forgets that you exist and you start over. But you can still grow on everything very fast as long as you just keep working to find the right answer. So know that you can do it. If that's something you want to do and you put your mind to it, you absolutely can do it.
No, and I think that's a really good point to end it on, especially because we're an hour over pretty much the time you said that you could do till. So
yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be filming that video today. I can say with confidence, but that's okay.
No, I mean, I appreciate it, Z, and I appreciate you coming on as well. I mean, having obviously bigger people on the podcast really does help us out, and it's more you helping us than us helping you, like in that sense. So we appreciate it a lot.
I need to send Clan a message right now.
Yeah, I fucking told you.
But yes, it's been fun, and just thank you for having me on. Seriously,
the pleasure's all ours. Well, that brings it to the end. Again, thank you very much, Zealand, for being on, and we'll be back shortly. Again, we've had discussions about other guests coming through the pipeline, which will all be revealed to you as soon as we can. But until then, thank you very much, and we'll see you guys next time.